Hello and welcome to another edition of the Steelers Depot live stream here on this Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Dave Bryan and myself here for the next hour answering as many of your Steelers questions as possible. As always, with me is Dave Bryan, and we got some Mason Rudolph news to talk about, which I didn't think was going to be on our agenda today, but here we are. Dave, how you doing?
Happy Mason Monday, Alex. Who had James Washington and Mason Rudolph news on their bingo card for the same day? Washington evidently agreeing to terms with the New Orleans Saints. So kind of funny how this news cycle is just so unpredictable, but made for an interesting afternoon overall with that kind of news breaking. I'm gathering that he's going to come in for a physical, and if all goes well, then probably a 1-year deal. I had kind of put it out of my mind that I didn't think he was coming back, but and where I'm going with that is, this very well could end up being one of those 4-year, what they call a 4-year player, 1-year veteran benefit contracts, similar to the one Zach Gentry signed early in the offseason. They could. If my math is right, they could technically give, Mason could earn like 2.1 right around in there million in 2023 if they did the max on this thing, and his salary cap charge would just be a little bit over $1.2 million because of that. Now, we don't know that's the way they're going. That would obviously be the max that he could earn to take care of that benefit, but it's something I didn't really think about until about 30 minutes after kind of that news broke there. But I guess we'll find out tomorrow. I think it's gonna be a busy transaction day for the Steelers on Tuesday.
Yeah, it may very well be, and it's not official on Rudolph, but certainly seems trending in that direction, and I'll admit that I was wrong. I did not really see a scenario in which Rudolph would return. I just figured he'd want to go somewhere else. I guess that really just speaks to the total lack of interest the rest of the NFL had in Mason Rudolph, because I have to think if he had a chance to go sign somewhere, even on just that, cheap 1-year type deal, that he would have taken it. So I think it's either the market speaking really loudly or the market speaking really quietly about their thoughts on Mason Rudolph.
Well, look at it this way too, because of one of the, and once again, we'll have to find out, what the specifics of the deal is and all. But let's say this is one of those 4-year player veteran benefit deals. Only the Steelers can offer him that,
Right.
because that was his prior team, and that benefit, doesn't count against the Steelers. That comes from, the NFLPA and all, and the league and all like that. But another team could not have offered him that. So let's say his best offer to this point was a veteran benefit contract with another team, a regular benefit contract, and a max signing bonus of 152,500. Well, by him, assuming, let's say this is a 1 year up to 2.1 million or whatnot. I mean, it's obviously gives him it was the opportunity to make the most money, more than likely,
Sure.
and then we can also discuss the other side on the Steelers side, that, I mean, you get back the devil that and you got the same quarterback room that you had last year, assuming that stays the same the rest of the offseason here. So, I mean, you could do worse than having Mason Rudolph as your number 3 quarterback in the room, especially if, at an extremely cheap cap charge.
Oh, sure. My contention, I've always said, even in the same thought, when I would talk about Rudolph, I didn't think wanted to come back, was I'm sure Pittsburgh would love to have him back as that known, clear, experienced number 3. That's what they valued so highly last year, why they did not want to trade Rudolph when there reportedly were some offers out there to do that. So it's great for Pittsburgh. It's great depth for that room. You're not going to find a better number 3 quarterback for Pittsburgh than Mason Rudolph. And, prior to this report, you had Tanner Morgan and not really sure what else. And so I'm a lot more comfortable about that depth right now than I was a day ago. But let's get into the chat here and appreciate you
Look, real
guys.
quick, I'll hold your hand on this because I didn't
Yeah.
think he was I didn't think he was coming back either. I thought he'd leave tire marks out in the parking lot out there. And look, you go back to what Omar Khan said back at the February 28th at the combine, right? He was asked if he thinks the proverbial ship has sailed when it comes to Rudolph possibly returning. And at the time, you kind of took it as lip service and all like that. He said, "No, not at all. We had a great relationship, good conversation with Mason, and the options. The door's still open." Well, I guess that door indeed remained open there. He did not lie.
He didn't, and that's why you don't burn bridges, why you leave those doors open, because you never know what things might look like a couple months from now. But yeah, busy day with some reported signings and visits. Kwon Alexander apparently in Pittsburgh tonight, so that could be a big signing, or at least big name signing that occurs tonight, tomorrow. Who knows when that could drop if it happens, but we'll get to the chat here, and as Randy just mentioned, and thank you for being here, Randy, and passing that message along, if you guys could hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate that. For those wondering, I've begun my study every snap of Kenny Pickett review. I started that a couple days ago. It'll still take time to go through the entirety of his season, but that video is finally making some progress. We'll start, though, with John Pennington, who says, "Hello, Dave and Alex. Any updates on the signing of tryout players and why sign Rudolph back to this team?" For the first question, only one known right now, and it may just be one, in Alfonso Graham, the rookie running back from Morgan State. He's caught a contract, and so that's the only name that we know right now. And then for Rudolph, again, just talking about that number 3 value, the experience he'll bring, the comfort of depth there. John also asked, does signing Rudolph mean that Mitch will be gone? No, Mitch Trubisky will be the number 2 quarterback this year. Someone did mention on a comment, though, and I know we're looking pretty far out, Dave, but in 2024, I guess we should be really careful to assume, but let's assume for a second Trubisky's gone. Does Rudolph re-up after this year and become that number 2 quarterback for 2024?
Well, we don't know what the contract is
Sure.
yet.
Well, let's
so,
assume. We can probably safely assume 1-year deal on Rudolph, right?
I mean, I would think, but I safely assume
Fair.
Mason Rudolph wouldn't be back, right? So,
Fair.
I don't want to say I safely assume that. I laid it out what the max of a 1-year veteran 4-year player contract look like. But here's the thing, though. You go back. When is this team really kind of ever now? At least they do have Kenny Pickett. The difference between a couple of years ago when Rudolph signed that contract, that 2-year deal or that extension, was the fact that they didn't have any quarterbacks under contract for that previous year at the time, right?
Right.
And so now, I mean, even before Rudolph signing, regardless of what the deal is, I mean, you obviously have Kenny Pickett under contract there, so that would be another reason to think that this is only a 1-year deal. Okay, so I mean, that's too far out there to kind of wonder about what happens next season. What will they do with Mason? Because remember, I mean, not Mason, but Mitch, because remember back at the combine as well, too, he was asked about, Omar Khan was asked about Mitch Trubisky, and, you kind of had to take it that they want him, at least, if you take Omar at his word, it sounded like they're hoping that he's going to stay in Pittsburgh past this year. Now, does that mean an extension later on in the summer? I mean, we've talked about that a few times on the podcast and all. It would have to be something that would be in Mitch's best interest as far as cash flow goes. And then, as we also said on the podcast as well, too, if I'm Mitch, I'm not doing an extension unless you lower those thresholds of the incentives that I can earn in 2023. In fact, I'd want them incentives wiped really, down to something that I know if Kenny was to miss 2 or 3 games, I'd know that I would hit, so, I mean, I just think overall it's just way too far out there to kind of speculate about what might happen with either Mitch or Mason past this year until maybe we get to week 1 of the season to see if they do anything with Mitch.
Sure, that's fair. And obviously a year is an eternity in the NFL, but it's an interesting thought that I can kind of go with, but obviously that's still all a ways down the road. Mike Adesso, endorsing the Rudolph signing, says, Mason is the best number 3 quarterback in the league. Let's see, 007 says, breaking news, the reindeer remains. Mutated Genome says, hello, Alex and Dave. If you were placing a bet today, who do you think will be the starting inside backers to begin the season? A good question, given the news you guys see on screen of Kwon Alexander going to be in Pittsburgh probably right about now. We'll see on Alexander. I mean, usually when guys come to visit, they tend to sign, not always, but that'd be an indication there. So it's Cole Holcomb and to be determined.
Yeah, and here's the thing about Kwon is he's coming off of a 1-year veteran benefit deal with the Jets, and did he miss some games last year? I looked at his tape.
I think he played. He didn't start every game, but I think he played in 16 or 17, so he was pretty healthy, to my knowledge.
So, I mean, I guess where I'm going with this is I can't imagine it being a very expensive, it would probably be another 1-year veteran benefit contract with $152,500 signing bonus. They're not going to go overboard, obviously, with a contract with him. So then, I mean, he would probably help you in some sub-pack, in some situations where you need some coverage out of a linebacker,
Sure.
And look, there's one thing that shows up on his tape, and it matches kind of the MO of what we've seen this on. He's a physical son of a gun, he can hit, and you get that aspect to the game, and I think he's pretty decent in a little bit of tape that I watched with him as far as pass coverage and all goes. So, I mean, it would be wide open, though. I guess it would be more situationally because obviously Cole Holcomb, you would think, is going to be your every down guy out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just becomes, are you in more run situations where you have a downhill guy? And look, I mean, I think Kwon can play downhill as well, too. I think, though, Landon is more of that point A, point B, blow everything up kind of guy, whereas Kwon's more the kind of the finesse downhill guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we have some questions here on Alexander. I've not jumped into his tape because I'll wait for the signing to become official. I mean, obviously he's got pedigree, which Tomlin, Pittsburgh loves. He's got Pro Bowls on his resume. Thought he was still productive last year with the Jets, and I think more of a sub-package-ish type of role. It is kind of messy. Obviously, they've retooled this entire inside linebacker room, and yeah, Alexander can hit, but you have Mark Robinson, Landon Roberts. Those guys are your downhill, physical, rundown type guys. Maybe they want, as you said, that sub-package guy because Pittsburgh demands so much from that off-ball linebacker position. Maybe they're trying to find a bit more specialization in terms of, instead of having one guy try to do everything. I mean, Holcomb, I think, will be that 3-down guy, but maybe there are some different sub-packages where Alexander can have a role and Robinson can have a role in different situations. I'm not quite sure. So, I have not jumped into his tape yet, but he's a guy that I think can still play, still cover, still move. And I don't think Roberts is your coverage answer. Robinson is not your, excuse me. Oh, just frog in my throat there. I don't think Robinson is your coverage answer. I don't really think Holcomb's that great of an answer either. So, we'll have to see if Alexander can offer something there.
Here's something else about Kwon Alexander. He hasn't played much on special teams really since 2018, and even that year he played 33 special team snaps. And in 2017 he played 55. Obviously, he was more of a starter in there, and you're not going to ask those guys to do that as much. So at least dating back 19, 20, and 21 and 22, he's logged. Looks like 9 and 13, 22 special team snaps for him.
Yeah, so if he gets signed, I assume that's with the intent of playing defensive snaps. You have Tanner Muse and Robinson, and Roberts could probably play special teams still, even though he's a bit older. So we'll see. I know that Mike's talking about, Spillane dimebacker role, but you only have one inside linebacker on the field in dime, and you just paid Holcomb a fair amount of money, so you're not quite sure how that's going to look. But we'll see. He's got to get signed first, and we'll kind of take it step by step. But definitely a big turnover in that off-ball linebacker room. Let's see. Caleb Skaggs says, is Kwon Alexander and Hakeem Butler the last 2 roster spots to fill, you think? We'll see. I don't know what to make of Butler. I thought there'd be something reported today, but signing was going to occur. That's when sign-out guys can officially sign, as we're hearing the reports on Luke Barku, and that's not official, but the word is out there. I mean, Omar Khan days ago mentioned Hakeem Butler by name when describing that wide receiver room, but I really don't know what to think of that right now.
Yeah, maybe they're wanting to bring all these guys in at one time and go get them medicals or whatnot. I
Right.
don't know. And they already obviously had Graham there, for camp, and that one became official on the NFL Wire today.
Mm-hmm.
There, so he was the only move there. I got a feeling we're going to be writing up some transactions on Tuesday, Alex, and maybe Butler will be one of those, and maybe that Cheedy, that offensive lineman Cheedy, how do
I think it's
Okiki,
Yeah.
Okiki. Maybe he'll be one. Mason, maybe he'll be one, and who knows? Maybe Kwon Alexander will be one. So we'll have to wait and see. But I have a feeling we'll be writing up a couple of them on Tuesday.
They're at 86 right now with Graham. Let's assume Mason, that puts you at 87, gives you 3 spots left. So Alexander, Butler, even if both of those were to sign, and we do not know that right now, but if both of those signed, you still got 1 spot open. So I guess that'd be Barku. Well, that'd be Barku, I guess, huh? As that extra one.
Did you count?
I wasn't counting him.
Okay, yeah, maybe it would be him then.
Okay, so yeah, it'd be Barku, Alexander, Butler, potentially. Barku,
and look, you can always release somebody,
right,
that's been a futures guy as well too.
That happens quite often this time of year, or an Akella Witherspoon cut, maybe hypothetically would occur. Let's see what else we have here. Luis Cervantes says, who will have more ball touches in 2023, Darnell Washington or Calvin Austin? That's a good question. Who has more, touches, Dave, Washington or Austin?
Yeah, that's gonna be a great closer we get to week 1 to try to guess on. That's a tough one in my head, sitting here. I mean, I kind of view both those guys as ceiling guys at maybe around 30 catches. Now, if you want to talk about total touches, I mean, could you do some stuff with Austin on some end around stuff and
the jet sweep?
Yeah, the jet sweep kind of stuff. Oh man, that's tough. I guess my gut right now would tell me to go with Austin by hair.
My first thought was Washington, but because it's total touches, I'll say Austin because you got return game, you have receiver run game, and actual receptions, whereas Washington is only receptions. So I'm going to go Austin based off the totality. In terms of who has more receptions, I think it gets really close. Austin has the benefit of being used in the RPO game and screen game and kind of more design type stuff. I think they'll design a couple of kind of throwback tight end screens for Washington, but probably with less frequency than what they could do with Austin. I think the numbers get really tight there in terms of receptions versus receptions. In terms of touches, I'm going to say, though, Austin over Washington.
Would you agree, though, it feels like the ceiling on both those guys is 30 receptions, the max?
Yeah, that sounds about right for a pretty run-heavy, run-focused offense, barring injury, of course.
Right.
Notorious Nate says, and there's 100 people in the chat, so appreciate that. Be sure to like the stream to bring in more of Steelers Nation. But Nate says, Alex, is there not a rule that could be passed allowing teams to dress 3 quarterbacks on game days? That is the Brock Purdy rule that you're referring to. That has not been officially passed by the NFL. It was looked at in the owners' meetings back in, I guess it was March. It was tabled until May when the next round of owners' meetings will occur. That should be taking place. I don't have the exact date, but obviously sometime soon.
Spring league meetings, Ryan. I'm looking at the NFL calendar right now. 5/22 to the 24th. So they start
Monday.
A week from today, right?
Yeah, they start Monday.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of those tabled talks about the third quarterback rule. And what my understanding is it could potentially be a practice squad guy, but you would have to elevate him, and then obviously before, when the inactives are announced, you would have to designate him as the third quarterback in that instance. And obviously, I would assume it'd be like the third quarterback rule used to be before it was taken away, that once if the third quarterback ever had to enter the game, then the other 2 could not go back.
Right. That's how it used to be. I don't know why they ever changed it. That was so logical. It made sense. It was perfect. The NFL messing with a perfectly fine thing. It's just such a big business thing to do. So I think they should go back to that. I think they will go back to that, but we'll see. She'll get her answer within the next 10 days or so.
I think just what you said there, and kind of calling it the Brock. I think they they want at least some sense of competitive balance in emergency situations here.
Yeah, they don't
So
want what happened last year in a
right,
title game where a quarterback goes down and it's just you can't even get back into that game.
right.
Steel Pastor, is Kwon better than a Landon? Again, I have not watched Kwon, but watching some of Roberts, I think Kwon Alexander is a better player than Landon Roberts. I didn't really get the Roberts signing at the time when you had Mark Robinson, and if they sign Alexander, I really won't understand the Roberts signing. Not that it's killing you financially. He may play on special teams, maybe part of some run heavy packages like Robinson was, against Carolina, against Baltimore last year. But I mean, I think Alexander would have a role over Roberts.
Yeah, look, I view Robert as a point A, point B downhill, blow everything up, kind of guy. That's his strength. Now Roberts can play downhill as well too. I just view, and he's a heavy hitter downhill, and I think Reed's pretty good. I just view him as a little bit more finesse when he moves downhill, as opposed to Roberts, is more like a bull in a china shop. More of that kind of that Vince Williams feel to him moving downhill. We're not so much. In what little that I've watched on Kwon there. And I think Kwon obviously gives you more overall,
Yeah.
As far as, passing situations and all like that.
I know this team wanted to add some depth, and so I assume that's why Roberts came in, and there was some knowledge of him, I suppose. But you had Mark Robinson, and Roberts to me is just the same as Mark Robinson, just a bit older and a little more expensive to have on the roster. So didn't really get that at the time. And if they sign Alexander, I really think Roberts becomes what do you do with this kind of guy? Because I want to see Robinson play. I think Robinson can extend this play and excel and make that second-year jump. Still Pastor asking about slot cornerbacks that could be cut from other teams. I have not looked at a list. I will later. I'm just going to focus on the guys right now, get the camp, kind of go from there. I have certainly concerns there. I've expressed that very clearly and strongly, but I'm not thinking too much about potential cuts because injuries and play, all those things are going to change circumstances from now until late August. So I'll think about those things when it's the time to think about those things.
And maybe that's why we haven't seen. I guarantee, and the Steelers have a history of this. Regardless of the GM, they'll this time of year, once these mini camps get over, these rookie mini camps get over, and we saw it today on the waiver wire overall. You get a lot of these guys that go to the rookie mini camp. As tryout players, they get signed by teams, and then teams waive other players there. So, maybe they're waiting to see all of this around the league, just to see if somebody does get waived or cut that kind of fits that or whatnot. And I don't think it's out of the question that we could still see another slot added at some point, but I would have to go through every roster and look at cap situations and see who maybe would be the most likely, that kind of thing. But I don't think it's out of the question that this team could still potentially add another experienced slot moving forward here.
And for what it's worth, I've gotten into the tape on Barku some. He's an outside guy. He's played a bit in the slot, but watching him in college, watching him a bit in the NFL in Jacksonville and in the XFL, he's been an outside guy. He's taller, he's a bit leaner, and so he's not going to be, I don't think, really in the mix as that slot cornerback.
And how many times do every offseason we constantly try to remind everybody, even after OTAs are over with, this team has a history of having a guy or two or three on their 53-man roster that was not even with the team during OTAs.
Yeah, how many are there? There's Zach Banner, Ray McLeod, Larry Ogunjobi, Trey Turner. Was Melvin Ingram a post-OTA signing? I think he was.
That sound. I'm
it
trying
was
to
late.
remember.
I don't know how late it was.
I don't remember how late it was, but
But you get the
look,
point.
I got a post floating around somewhere on the site. They've got a long history, or trading. The old Vance McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a history of trading for guys or signing guys off. That way.
Justin says, thanks for everything you guys do. You make the off season way more bearable. So thank you, Justin. Appreciate your being here. Jonathan asking the same question about the roster spots that are left, Alexander and Butler. Again, Butler, I just don't know what to make of that. Alexander, it's going to be about contract. Usually that's a sticking point there. So he'll be in tonight, and we may get that 11 p.m. tweet or that 8 a.m. tweet about Alexander, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Someone asked the question, Zachary does this potentially play out like Landry Dobbs back in the day, keep Rudolph as the 2 and cut trade Mitch to save money? I'm not going to put my foot in my mouth again and say, no, there's no chance of that happening, but my expectation is Pittsburgh's going to really value and prioritize that deep quarterback depth there, and they're going to have Trubisky as the 2. They've kept him this far. They've been adamant about that, and Rudolph as the 3, so that's my expectation right now.
I mean, if you wanted to, you could easily create a scenario in your head, though, right? And that's why you got to be careful with talking about in absolutes when it comes to this. Is what happens if they get into camp and or in preseason and Rudolph maybe plays better and maybe. And these are huge maybes here, and maybe Tanner Morgan shows you at least a little something that you feel like you could work with that as a number 3 moving forward. And another maybe you're trying to extend Mitch and that's not working out, and maybe another quarterback room across the league loses a guy and they get what I'm trying to say here is even though that I'm not expecting it to happen, I don't think you are as well too. Crazier things have happened, right? Especially now when you got, supposedly Mason coming back to this room. I don't think it'll happen. I would like to think that Mitch and Mason are both going to be on this roster, 53-man roster as we sit here right now in middle of May. But crazier things have happened.
Sure, I'm not going to say no, there's no chance. I'm not going to say there's a 1% chance. I think what you're laying out is plausible, at least I think more so in the sense of, Rudolph looks, because they know what they have in basically all these guys, but, if Rudolph looks fine and somebody goes down in another, city and somebody calls asking about Mitch Trubisky, I think Pittsburgh listens, but they listened to Rudolph last year and they didn't deal him. So, again, I'm not going to say no and that it can't happen. I'm not expecting that to happen right now.
And here's the thing, too. How many teams out there are going to be where they want to trade for an $8 million salary, too?
Right. And in the middle of camp and, learning an offense on the fly. I understand an injury can wreck plans and make teams kind of panic, but
right.
Yeah, the contract's going to be another issue because most teams aren't going to have $8 million to clear, in late August or whatever the case is.
Right.
Let's see what else we have here. What about Tanner Morgan? He's wearing Mason's number. That's a good point. The jersey number, not always true. So Benny Snell might return. Probably not.
Well, look, so people have brought this up, and at this point, you wouldn't think guys like Watt and Benny Snell are going to be back, but I don't think you can rule it out either. But obviously teams, once they get into the preseason there, they have so many guys on the roster and not enough numbers to go around that you generally see one guy on offense wear a number and one guy on defense wear the same number there. So, I didn't even think about that. I guess they did announce Tanner Morgan is number 2, right?
Right. So how much will Mason have to pay Tanner Morgan to change? $5? $10? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, let's see. What numbers would they have open for that then? Would it be, does anybody have 5 right now?
I'm not looking at the roster, but I don't think so.
Right.
I know Oladokin wore it last year for a hot minute.
Maybe they talked Tanner into taking 5 and Mason gets 2. I don't know.
I don't think you have to talk him into. Tanner, you want to stay here, change your number. Yeah. You got no leverage. You got no pull. So I think that'll get sorted out. But good point there, Randy. Brian Tolini asked the question, which Steelers games did you two last attend in person? What a good question. What was the last Steelers game you actually were physically at, Dave?
Oh, wow.
The Greg Lloyd?
No, I've seen one. I've seen that's the last regular season game.
Okay.
That I attended. The week 1 game in Jacksonville. The Greg Lloyd injury game. many, many moons ago. I think preseason. I want to say it was the game against. I want to say it was Michael Vick's rookie season exhibition game in Atlanta.
Okay.
It was either that or one in New Orleans, a preseason game in New Orleans.
How did you don't you know how Vic looked if that was the game? Do you remember any impressions of rookie?
Oh,
Vic,
Alex,
all the
I was using tools of the
Okay.
devil
All
at
right.
that time.
So no, there was no analysis of Mike Vick's
yeah,
play.
there was. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't. I mean, I've obviously gone back and kind of rewatched, some of those games when I've got a chance, but I don't. It's been too many years ago.
And for me to answer that question, I think was one of the terrible Raiders losses. Unfortunately, it's been far too many. It was not the Terrell Pryor game. It was the one where Ryan Mundy, I think, had either a pick or PI. I forget, something happened with Ryan Mundy in that game. I think it was when Gradkowski was the quarterback for the Raiders. I believe that was the last game that I've attended. It's been a while. Zachary Trailer, will Isaac Seumalo be the left guard? I think so. He's got the most experience there. He was a right guard last year in Philadelphia, but he's played twice as many snaps on the left side as right side. Daniels settled in nicely at right guard last year. You could, flip him and put Daniels at left guard, but my expectation will be Seumalo at left guard.
That would be mine as well.
Mason versus Miles boxing match someday from David Kapoor. I guess Le'Veon Bell and Pac-Man and through Pac-Man, Vontaze Burfict, they're all going at it today on Twitter, seems to be the case.
Yeah. You know what would be a great undercard of Le'Veon Bell versus Vontaze Burfict would be Pac-Man versus Joey Porter.
Jerry Porter.
Jerry Porter.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
And then another undercard from that would be, I guess, I don't know, Vince Williams versus... I don't know what, Reggie Nelson. That would be a mismatch for sure.
I was thinking
Vince Williams versus anybody would probably be a mismatch. But
I was thinking Jeff Reed versus Sheets Paper Towel Machine. See who round 2 on that one. Do you think it's a bit? Do you think it's just a real beef that these guys have, or just kind of the wrestling, boxing? Let's create some stories to try to.
I think Le'Veon was kind of honest there, at least in that little clip that we have from that what was it, Misfits Boxing or whatnot show, and I think that this thing has just grown legs, and people commenting on Twitter, and Le'Veon's not going to back down from it, and I think that's why you got all the war of words right now. I tell you what, if I was Barstool or one of the, I'd look into this. I've paid $69.95 for worse fights than that, so. I have to admit, I would be intrigued to see those two go at it for sure. But I don't know. I don't think anything will come of it.
We'll keep you posted if it does, though. A couple of points of clarification. Run Bayou says 3 fourth quarter touchdowns by Brucey. So, yeah, that was, I believe, I was at a Colts preseason game, too. I don't know where that fits in the timeline, but I was at that terrible Raiders game. And Albie Quirky says no one currently has number 5 on the roster. So Morgan might be getting that. Back to the questions here. And thank you guys for being here and liking the stream and subscribing to the channel and just hanging out with Dave and I on a Monday. Next question will come from, if I can pull it up here. Seeing some comments here. Joel Cross, does Alfonso Graham do more for the Steelers than Master Teague? Would Teague get more offensive snaps? I mean, they're both obviously fighting for, to survive and try to stick on this team in any way that they can. I think Teague fits the mold of the Steelers running back. He's big, he's powerful. Graham's, small, scat back that has not caught a lot of passes in college. But let's get these guys into camp. And it's more about, who's conditioned, who can be more well-rounded, who can, make Danny Smith happy. Those are the things that are really going to matter as much, if not more so, than pure offensive ability.
Right, and we talked about Master Teague quite a bit on the podcast this morning here, and I mean he's got to stay healthy, and B he's got to really show something on special teams this summer and all like that. Whereas a guy like Morgan, bit smaller, unless he's going to be a return guy, he's probably not going to be out there on special teams.
Yeah, I don't know if he did much return work in college. He had 3 kick returns last year, but he was their starting running back, so I don't know what his history was prior to that. But Mike Adesso with a comment that I was going to make here. I enjoyed our conversation on Master Teague, but I wish some of these moves would have happened before 10 a.m. this morning because we spent a lot of time talking about nothing on the podcast. And as usual, we get off the pod and all these signings and visits start to occur.
Yeah, we'll have to see what this does to Wednesday. And we kind of left it open whether or not to have a show on Wednesday. So we'll play it by ear.
Yeah, it might have a show though. If Rudolph gets signed, they sign some other guys. I think it might be worth 45 minutes, an hour to talk about some of these things. Lynn says, "What's Tyler Vaughn's doing these days? He's got an XFL championship ring. I guess is what he's doing, right?" And so he had you wrote about that, Dave. He had a really good showing in that game.
Yeah, he had a good showing. I think he had something like 30 something catches on the season and all like that. I think really his final 2 weeks, he really in the playoffs there, put up some pretty good numbers and all like that. So yeah, it was good to see. It's always fun to kind of watch these former players and kind of track their paths where they go.
I always wonder why he didn't not only, be on Pittsburgh's practice squad, but not be anywhere in the NFL last season. I really want to know what the story was. Did he get hurt? I mean, did something happen that we don't know about? So good to see him succeeding in the XFL, and hopefully he can get back in the NFL this summer. I'll Be Quirky says, "What does it mean when the draftees and other rookies sign multiple-year contracts but wind up not making the team? Is it language written in the contract, and does it not affect the cap?" So, for example, Alfonso Graham, he technically signed a 3-year deal, right? And so how does that work cap-wise? Is there an impact on that? Can you kind of walk us through those types of contracts?
Yeah, we'll have to find out first and foremost what kind of signing bonus, if any, that he got. Normally, these guys that come out of these rookie mini camps as tryout players, if they get a signing bonus at all, it's like $1,000.
Yeah, very small.
Or something like that. I mean, super small. So let's say it was $1,000 signing bonus that they gave him, and let's say they cut him at the beginning of the season after June 1st, then $333 would be dead money for 2023, and then the others, what would it be, $667 would be dead money in 2024. So that's how that would work. I mean, the only thing that's going to be guaranteed with him, if anything, and it's the same with really all of the undrafted free agents, is the signing bonus. And really, you can rubber stamp that for most of the draft class as well too. The signing bonus up until, let's see, even Darnell Washington, I think, I'm trying to remember, I don't think there's going to be anything guaranteed. We'll have to wait and see in the next couple of days. I don't think there's going to be anything guaranteed. What did I write in the post on that, Alex? I don't
on the Washington signing?
Yeah, on the Washington signing. Usually that's out of range from guaranteed money beyond the signing bonus there.
Where does Benton, while I do that, does Benton, he's in that guaranteed?
Benton, if you look back at kind of the slotting and people drafted in that neighborhood there, I'm expecting the first 2 years of his deal to be guaranteed along with the signing bonus there. Now, what the injury language is and all like that, that's a different story. But generally, I think the first 2 years, full years on Benton are likely to be fully guaranteed, along with obviously the signing bonus. And then a guy like Porter, it's going to be interesting because he's that 32 pick, overall. And I'm willing to bet that. And sometimes you have seen that these guys creep into the third year and get a portion of that third year guaranteed. He's going to get at least the first 2 years of his deal guaranteed. Talking about Joey Porter Jr. The question is that third year, how much, will that be fully guaranteed? His agent's probably going to push very, very hard to have all 4 years guaranteed because he's the 32nd overall pick, even though he's not a first round guy. But I'm willing to bet the Steelers hold ground and say, that's not going to happen. I bet it comes down to conversation as to how much of that third year of Joey Porter's is guaranteed. I'm willing to bet. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up being the last one to get signed.
Right, because it's kind of unique, the situation
Right,
he's in. I have
right.
the numbers on Washington. I don't know how applicable this would be today, given there's been a CBA that's signed. I don't know if there's an impact there, but whenever New England forfeited their first-round pick, and last time we only had 31 in the first round, what happened with the 32 pick in that draft? I'm curious to see if that could be a precedent.
You remember who the player was, real
No,
quick?
you'd have to go back. I barely remember the year. What year was that? 2018? I could be the 2019 draft. I'm not even sure what the actual year. Maybe it's even earlier than that. But I'd be curious to see what took place that year, which wasn't that long ago. It was, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And if that's going to have any sort of because if that guy got more guaranteed, then you're not going to go backwards on that. The question is, can Porter's agent be able to move forward and get more than what players in the past have gotten? So be watching that. And you're right. I think Jones will be some things and offset language, I guess, and structure and signing bonus structure and stuff like that. So there'll be a little bit of trickiness there. But Porter at 32 is going to be, I think, the one that may take the most amount of time. But all these guys will get signed by camp. Holdouts are long gone, so it's not really anything that's going to affect Porter's play.
Right.
Let's see. Randy Wagner or J.J. Watt says he's not returning to the NFL, but I'd sure like him to move to Pittsburgh and support the Steelers. He's supporting the Steelers. He said he'll be at a game and called it Heinz Field. He went full Yinzer calling it Heinz Field, but the J.J. Watt rumors have been hot lately, and he basically crushed all those today.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you would just had to have been an extremely hopeful person to believe, kind of all that. In certain sites are trying to have been painting this as he's coming in for a visit, and that kind of nonsense. And obviously, we stayed far away from that. I mean, common sense alone tells you, I think, that something like that wasn't going to happen. And he's just not, even if he was to change his mind and say I'm willing to play, he's not going to play for the minimum. He's going to make it worth his while to get back out there for another year. So, but the whole mood depends. But look, he can be a fan from Arizona, right?
Sure, there's a bunch of them out there, I'm sure.
Right, he could take a jet back and forth, his own jet back and forth, whenever he wants, and come see a game. So I don't think he necessarily needs to be, live in Pittsburgh. But the way he made it sound like, we'll probably see him up there in the suites a couple times during the 2023 season.
I'm sure we'll be writing about it at some point. The cameras will catch it. Yeah, whenever he's coming back from Burnley, this Pittsburgh's his in-between stop between, I don't know, Houston or wherever he's living right now, and he's got a soccer thing in Pittsburgh. I'm sure I see the rumors have been crushed, but they're going to continue. I'm sure Pittsburgh especially gets on a run and is in a playoff position late in the season. I'm sure it'll continue, but Watt says he is not coming back.
And I believe him.
Me too. Let's see. Randy says, is there anyone here who has confidence in jet sweeps in the NFL? I believe the numbers show the jet sweeps in Pittsburgh, at least, were fairly successful last season. They weren't terribly inefficient. So there's some evidence, I guess, there for you, Randy.
Yeah, look, I mean, everybody remembers them when they don't work, just like wide receiver screens, right?
Right, but I think they're not, of all the things I have issue with Canada.
You don't want to see 7 of them a game,
sure.
But
they worked okay last year. And with Calvin Austin, they may work also pretty well. Scott says, what do you think about the possibility that Keanu Neal and or Patrick Peterson play the slot a significant amount this year? It's a big mess. I don't think Neal's the answer. I think he's too tight-hip, not a great coverage guy to do that. Peterson, potentially, but you could throw out another 4 or 5 names of guys who may fit there. I wouldn't even rule out Levi Wallace, DeMonte Casey, Chandon Sullivan. Omar Khan mentioned Duke Dawson. So we'll take it into camp, and I'll see how it looks and kind of go from there. But I think it's one big jumbled up mess, and I don't know if Pittsburgh quite knows how it's going to look, and that's a concern of mine. Let's see. Infinity says 80 more days till the NFL is on the TV, the Hall of Fame game. It's Cleveland this year. I don't know who Cleveland's playing, Dallas maybe, but I know the Browns are going to be in the Hall of Fame game this year.
And I think it's 112 days until the Steelers' Week 1 game. I think I looked that up out of boredom first thing this morning here.
Not much more time to be bored today after that. Yeah, September 10th is that first game. You see the NFL's putting that playoff game on Peacock? It's exclusively only on Peacock?
No.
Hear about that? Yeah, they're gonna have a wild card game that's exclusively only on Peacock. Well, you can only watch it online, which is, I think, silly. I think it's pretty ridiculous to do that, but that is the direction the NFL is going with, streaming and online watching. Let's see. Sean May's asking about Reuben Foster, who's with the Maulers right now. He's played well. I think he's had some injuries too. And obviously, the off the field stuff would kind of lead me to believe Pittsburgh's not going to show a lot of interest there, but he's playing well enough where he probably can try to get back in the NFL somewhere.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he lands with a team.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be Pittsburgh, especially if Kwon Alexander gets signed. At that point, your room's looking pretty full. Albie Corky, do you think the heavier emphasis on run game and with high-profile O-line, they'll go with 4 running backs and 1 fullback and only 5 wide receivers, or do you see what they believe is best for special teams? There's a lot of ways you can configure this thing. I think it'll be, 4 of tight end, fullbacks, 3 running backs, and receivers dependent on who plays well, who's healthy, who can help out on special teams. So, we can try to create these benchmarks right now, but I think it's just going to come down to the best people and based on what happens this summer.
And as I always like to say, these things have a funny way of working themselves out with injuries or whatever. So, we can sit here and map out, ideally, and I think Alex kind of hit on what you would deem would probably be the numbers when it comes to those position groups. But, what if you have somebody that's not ready for week 1 and not serious enough to go on, what are you going to need for special teams? So, it's impossible because so many different things. We've seen it in the past. We've tried to say, I'll tell you what, I guarantee it's going to be this, that, and the other. And then something happens during the off season and you get to week 1 and you have offset numbers somewhere.
Especially on the initial, like the very initial post cut down roster, because you got an injured guy, you're carrying it to designate him to, at least so he's eligible to return. That happened with Calvin Austin last year. So after the first initial cut down, Pittsburgh had 7 wide receivers on the roster because Austin was that 7th guy until they could put him on injured reserve. So those things always kind of screw up the initial numbers and trying to predict in terms of how many they'll keep. We have kind of general guidelines, but it's hard to say for sure. Got a generous $5 super chat from Larval who says, with all the turnover, why do you think the Steelers didn't prioritize inside linebacker? The Shazier times were good. I mean, I think there was a focus on that considering all the turnover, so I don't want to say they didn't prioritize, did not want to try to make some moves there, but yeah, it's a fair critique. I mean, I think Pittsburgh assigned 100,000 free agent off-ball linebackers in the last 6-7 years. Most of them have been bad, so why not go draft and try to invest there? I will say, though, yeah, the Shazier times were good, but good luck finding the next Ryan Shazier. Those guys are hard to acquire.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we said earlier in the pre-draft process, man, it looks like this team's got so many holes and not enough draft picks and all. And, they did obviously go right out there in free agency right away and signed a couple of inside linebackers. And, obviously they did not, depends on what you consider Herbig, that's that we got to see how that all plays out long run here. And, they did add that, who's that Jets kid late last season?
Jonathan Marshall.
No, the linebacker.
Tay Crowder, the Giants.
Giants. Tay Crowder. They added him, and obviously Mark Robinson's still on the roster, and Muse. Don't forget they've added Muse, and we'll obviously see what happens here with Kwon Alexander in the next 24, 48 hours there. So, they obviously did not they made the position more of a priority in free agency, and I don't think they ignored it. It's probably just not where everybody wants it to be or thinks it should be.
Yeah, the question is, did they make the right investments, enough investments? And we'll see, but certainly there was an effort to totally remake that room, and they have. Mike Adesso, you've both said we can't properly know what Kenny is until year 2. Do you think the bye week we should know? If he's not showing improvements, is that too early to cut bait and move on? I mean, obviously not going to cut bait week 7 when they come out of the bye. But I think by that time we'll have a feel for, did he make the jump in year number 2? And I don't like to, necessarily conclude things because quarterback arcs, they rise, they fall for a lot of players. But I think having the first 5 games is enough of a gauge based off of that, based off of camp and preseason, and of course the regular season action to really feel, okay, is this guy making that leap that we hope and really kind of need Kenny Pickett to make in your number 2?
Yeah, look, I use that as a kind of a benchmark to what I feel I would have as a decent feel on a guy I've seen enough play. But even so, I'm not saying you get to that point and we make hard determinations that unless it's just, unless it's just god awful
Or really good.
or really, really good. Yeah. But I don't think you sit there and say, okay, here's the bye week. Do you guys think they should draft a quarterback next year? That kind of thing. But obviously we'll have a lot more information that we had, and obviously the full off season and everything. I mean, we should see noticeable jumps in his play and what those look like and to what degree we'll be able to talk about. You can make for sure when we get into that bye week, and assuming he stays healthy, we're gonna have a lot of thoughts on where he's at.
Yeah, in terms of, do you cut him? Do you move on? Do you look for somebody else? You don't have to have those conversations in season, because even if your answer at that time is yes, we should, you can't do anything about it. So wait for the whole season to play out, see if there is progression, something that surprises you, and then once the season ends, you can evaluate the entire season in its totality and then decide what is the future of the position for your franchise. So again, I think you can start thinking about those things and start believing things by the bye, but nothing really matters until the season is over and all the tape is out there and you can really sit back and evaluate things start to finish. Let's see. How about a meet and greet at Latrobe? I mean, I'll be there at camp, so people often come up and say hello before practice. I'm easy to spot. I'm the small, childlike figure with the binoculars and the notebook, so I'm pretty easy to see. So I don't know about an official meet and greet, but I'll be there every single day at training camp. Let's see what else we have here in the last 10 minutes. So be sure to get your questions in for Dave and I. Randy says there's a lot of talk about Calvin Austin III. How's his health? Ready to go? We all love speed. Omar Khan said he looked good. He was healthy. I imagine he'll be ready for OTAs when they start here in just over 10 days and or just less than 10 days. And so I assume Austin is good to go.
Yeah, and I think that'll be next week will be interesting to see some of the reports and the video come out and see him going hopefully full speed and all like that. And Alex and I talked this morning on the podcast. It's a shame that guys that especially rookies that have to spend that don't play, that end up on IR and all like that they're not eligible to take part in the rookie mini camp. This team only had 5 what they deem first year players eligible to on the roster to take part in that mandatory mini camp. So people say, well, it's only a week, but a young kid like that didn't play, you want to get him as much work as you possibly can. So I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge big deal, but I mean, that would be 3 more practices, that he would have, and that kind of stuff. So, that you can bet that'll be one of the things that we'll be watching closely next week is, the reports and the video to at least make sure he's back healthy and, good to go throughout the entire OTAs and mandatory minicamp.
If you've never played in an NFL game, you should be eligible for rookie minicamp. That's my belief. I remember Lavon Hook's gotten like 5 rookie minicamps in his career, and Calvin Austin can't get in a second after losing his entire rookie season. I think it's a pretty dumb system that the NFL has created. Ross Swisher asks, Loudermilk or Adams getting cut? Yeah, I think both guys are in danger. I don't know who's in more danger, but Pittsburgh drafted 3 or brought in 3 nose tackle capable guys in Benton and Fehoko and Watts, and they had, Benton can play up and down the line, and you got Marshall in that mix, and, Loudermilk did not play well last year. He offers nothing as a pass rusher. His run defense has been below standard, and so, yeah, I think both of those guys are in danger of not making this team.
I would agree.
Who do you think are the starting 3 cornerbacks week 1? That's from Eddie Spaghetti. That's a good question. Wallace, Peterson, outside. What it looks like in sub-package, again, is kind of a big mess. You would expect Porter to find a way to work his way onto the field. I don't know who's shifting. I don't know what they're doing. But, Dave, you have any other thoughts there?
Yeah, kind of what you speculated here. And, there's been a lot of that kind of inferred that they're going to move Peterson around. What does that look like? Can Porter win the job outright in training camp, and it just uh, I don't know. That's the best way I can answer that right now. If I had to guess right now, uh, I think it'd be along the lines of what you said. Wallace and Peterson probably on the outside, with Porter breathing down his neck to get on the field potentially. I mean, could Porter win the job? Absolutely, he could.
Yeah.
But then I think the biggest question is what's going to happen in sub package.
Right. I tweeted last week, and I still kind of go back and second guess myself, but I said Peterson slot, Porter, Wallace outside. That's my guess of it now in terms of passing downs. I think rundowns, you actually may see DeMonte Casey get some work there. He does have a slot background. He's physical, kind of that Mike Hilton type build and player, but I really just don't have a clue, right? It may be somebody not on this team right now, as we talked about earlier, that comes in late trade, late cut, who becomes your slot corner for week one. Albie Quirky, no fifth-year option on Porter because he was a second-round pick, even though he's 32nd overall. No fifth-year option on him. I had a question here, another contract question I wanted to throw to you, Dave. Jim Kelly, why sign undrafted players in the rookie camps to 3-year deals? Can you explain that, Dave?
It's because that I think that's
the structure is, yeah.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's the structure with them because all draft picks have to be now. Those are 4-year deals.
Right, and all UDFAs are all 3-year deals.
Right. I just think I would have to look up the exact language of that, but I believe that's the rule in the CBA somehow, the way it's written.
Were that before the rookie slotting deal kind of got put in place for UDFAs all 3 years, or was there kind of more flexibility? Because
there was more flexibility because the Steelers used to sign some of their later round guys only 3-year deals.
Okay.
Even though other teams would do 4-year deals.
Was there a max for draft picks? Because like the first overall picks were getting obviously crazy money, and those were
right.
Were they like 5-year deals or 6-year deals?
It seemed like they were 5, mostly 5 and all like that. But obviously all that language, the last couple of CBAs have gone out the door. In fact, because I know Antonio Brown, I remember his rookie contract was initially a 3-year deal. And obviously he was a draft pick. So right around in there, the CBA came out, 2011?
Right. There was that lockout. Yeah. So he was the last year before the new CBA got put in place.
Right. I just think that's what the CBA calls for now when it comes to rookie undrafted players.
Right. And that's why Alfonso Graham, for example, is a 3-year deal. That's required. So I saw some headlines today. Graham signs 3-year deal. Yeah, he does, but it doesn't. So is everybody else in that position. Every other tryout guy that's getting signed. So it's really no difference there. Run by you. Who's that special offensive assistant they hired? That's Glenn Thomas, who's from Arizona State. And so I don't know exactly his role, but that is the name, Glenn Thomas. Albie Quirky says it was Emmanuel Ogbah, drafted 32nd by the Browns in 2016. So that was the post-Spygate draft with the penalty. So if you could find out at some point what Ogbah signed in terms of his contract, that may at least provide some sense of what Porter might be looking at for his 32nd overall second-round contract. So thank you there.
When was that?
He says 2016.
And he's had another contract since then, didn't he?
Yeah, he's played for a while. He kind of bounced around, I think, a bit. But if you can find that rookie deal of what he signed as a Brown,
he had with the Browns, it looks like 3.457 in guarantees, and so it feels like maybe the first 2 years with him was effectively guaranteed. I'm showing a 4-year total, I think, that he signed of $6.609 million. I want to say it was just the first 2 years. I would have to go back to the Wayback Machine here while you talk here real quick.
Okay, yeah. And again, that may not necessarily guarantee what Porter gets. It's been quite some time there, I guess, since that situation occurred. New CBA's been signed too, but just to maybe try to lay some of that groundwork. Mike Adesso is clarifying about that Pickett comment. Didn't mean to actually cut him, just bench him. Yeah, I kind of figured you didn't mean, cut him outright, but in terms of moving on, turning the page, benching him, it would have to be, I think, really bad for Kenny Pickett the first 5 weeks for this team to bench him coming out of the bye. So I think maybe, but it would have to be so obvious, so disastrous. You should just sit there and say this guy has to hit the reset button, and it's not working well. So unless it's that bad, I think you let Pickett play out this season as much as possible. Kind of any new info on the deal?
Looking here.
You're looking there. John Pennington says, guys, I'm still concerned about the backup center position, and why can't this team put some serious thought about the position? Yeah, it's a little unclear, but I mean, Hassenauer was their backup last year. Not a tremendously, great backup option, but there's some guys there. You got Anderson, the draft pick, and Ryan McCollum, and I mean, Herbig has snapped in emergency moments before. So yeah, I mean, it's something where there's some weakness there, but I'm not terrified by how it looks today. I think McCollum's a guy that might actually make a run at this roster spot sometime in August.
All right, looks like with Ogba back in, then let's see, 2016 his base salary was guaranteed. 2017 his base salary was guaranteed. His entire signing bonus of 3.007 was obviously guaranteed, and it looks like 659,740 of his $1.50876 million salary in 2018 was guaranteed. So a little more than half. So a little more than 2.5 years was guaranteed of his 4-year contract back then.
Okay, so so Porter's going to get at least that, if not more, that whole 30-year fully guaranteed. Then
he's going to get at least the first 2 years, and he's going to dip into that third year some of that guaranteed as well too. But once again, I wouldn't be surprised if his agent tries to go for the 4 full years at least to start with. He's not going to get it, but that'll be a starting point, and then the talk will be how much of that third year can he get guaranteed.
My guess, and I'm just guessing here, I think he gets the full third year guaranteed because for Pittsburgh, how often will they ever be in this situation again? Where they're picking 32nd overall in the second round. I mean, it's not like a precedent that's going to really come back and bite you.
You never know, though.
You never know. But even if you are in that situation, I mean, it's not a crazy thing, not a crazy risk to take. It's not opening up some crazy Pandora's box. I mean, he's going to get at least for the first 2.5. He's going to get what Ogba got in 2016, right? I mean, that you can write that in pen today, I would have to think.
Yeah, I'll say this. I'm willing to bet he does not get all through. I'm willing to bet he doesn't get the first 3 years fully guaranteed. It'll be like 2 3/4 or something like that.
All right, I'll take that bet. We'll revisit that one whenever that. Now, anxiously awaiting this contract to be signed, just to see.
So you think he gets the first 3 fully guaranteed, and I'm going to say he doesn't.
All right, you think something between a half and the full, like the 3/4 that you mentioned there. All right, fair enough. Run by you. How do guys end up as exclusive rights free agents? That's built into the contract that's signing. That's a good explainer. How does that work, Dave?
Well, it's all based on credited accrued seasons goes against free agency. I think credited goes towards your pay amount. So if you have a guy that's let's say signed, let's say an undrafted free agent, and he gets cut initially, and then once the season starts, maybe you have to sign him to the roster. Those are usually 2-year deals. And let's say he stays on the roster for those 2 years, starting with his rookie season. Technically, once he hits your squad, because the other contracts have been terminated, you're talking about having a 2-year guy there. And let's say he stays on your roster for those 2 years, then he would become an exclusive rights free agent.
So basically, it's a guy that kind of bounces on and off a roster early in his career. That typically is how you end up on that path.
Right. Okay. Those usually end up being like draft picks that don't make it, or undrafted guys that don't make it that wind up maybe in their rookie season or whenever.
Like Robert Spillane, who gets put on the practice squad on and off, that whole path, right?
Right. That finally gets a contract in season, and it's a 2-year deal, and they play it out.
Gotcha. Do want to mention here, I just saw this piece of news come along my phone here before we wrap things up. Your guy has signed a contract. Dave, I don't know if you know who your guy is. It's XFL
you're talking
offensive
about
tackle
Jared Jones-Smith.
I should have known that you would know. He is signed with the Washington Commanders, though. So not Pittsburgh. It was a good guess, but he is going to be in a camp this year. He's going to Washington.
Yeah, he had a good season from the little that I saw with the Battle Hawks. I thought maybe he'd be a guy because of the measurables, because of being in need for a tackle and all, like another body there. I thought maybe he'd be a guy that they would potentially look at, and obviously knowing a lot about him from his time at Pitt and all like that.
Right, and then Bayou's asking about Villanueva being an exclusive rights guy at one point in his career. That was because he was signed to the practice squad and then elevated in that whole song and dance, right? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that was when they signed him to that long-term deal, right? Or was that after his exclusive rights season? Was that but when he's going to become a restricted rights free agent?
Wasn't he actually a restricted that year?
So it was the year after, yeah. That would make the most amount of sense. And they kind of had that leverage to get him that pretty cheap left tackle, 4-year, $24 million, whatever it was there, yeah. Let's see. Eddie Spaghetti, our last probably comment here, is Devin Bush's career is very similar to Kendrell Bell. I would disagree. I think Bell's high was a lot higher than what Devin Bush was at his best. I thought Bush was at his best the first 5 games of his sophomore season before tearing his ACL. I kind of started to see it come together for him, but not to Bell's level, and it ended obviously pretty quickly.
Yeah, that ankle injury with Kendrell Bell, it's one of those what ifs. What if Kendrell Bell would have never sustained that ankle injury?
Yeah, because he was Rookie of the Year, right? Or a real strong candidate. So Bush never got to that level. Mike's asking, did we ever announce the winners of the mock draft contest? We did. That was, a week or so ago. Yeah, just search mock draft contest, and we do have the winners on there. So we're going to wrap things up. Appreciate you guys being here. Good crowd on hand tonight. Busy day at Steelers Depot. Might be a busy couple of days as well with Alexander and other signings that may occur. We expect that roster to get to 90 here pretty quickly. So thank you guys for being here. And Dave, as always, thank you for being here.
And thank you for leading this thing along and taking the questions. And thank you for everybody for showing up. Once again, hopefully, I think it's going to be a busy day on the transaction wire. So, make sure you keep reading the site, and appreciate you showing up, and peace and love, everybody.
Yeah.
Happy Mason Monday.
Happy Mason Monday. And Dan just got here in time, Dan Hedrick. So thank you, Dan. You can see an archive version of this if you did just get in here at this 8 o'clock hour up on the site here in just a little bit. But want to thank you guys for being here. Be sure to stick around to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Got some more video content coming out for you guys. And thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.